Today we're doing an article from The Guardian. It's a UK newspaper. We haven't done The Guardian before, so let's try The Guardian. And today's article is about a man who sold more than £4 billion worth of lateral flow tests to the UK, and he has been accused in court of being a high-end con artist. How can that be? I hear you all cry. Let's find out. Let's find out what this is all about. Boss of US firm giving $4 billion in UK COVID contracts, accused of squandering millions on jets and properties. And of course, that means the boss of US firm has been accused of squandering millions on jets and properties. It's just very often made into a fragment rather than a whole clause for a headline. Okay, exclusive. Rishi Sunak, that's the Prime Minister of the UK, if any of you are unaware. Rishi Sunak's team helped fast-track deal with firm founded by Charles Huang, who says contracts generated $2 billion in profit. Nice. There's Charles Huang on his private plane, looking very pleased with himself. Let's read further. In California, state of sunshine and palm trees. Now look at that. That's an A positive, guys. California is the state of sunshine and palm trees. Okay, that's why we've got the two commas. So in California, state of sunshine and palm trees, a small group of men are locked in a big legal fight over the money made by a US company selling COVID tests to the British government. The founder of Innova Medical Group says his business collected $2 billion in profits, that's £1.6 billion, $2 billion, one of the largest fortunes banked by any medical supplier during the scramble for life-saving equipment in the early months of the pandemic. So this was one of the most profitable industries to be in 2020, 2021. And what you'll notice is this is another A positive, actually, guys. So the let me just get this correct. They collected this $2 billion in profits is renamed one of the largest fortunes banked by any medical supplier. Okay, in a storm of claims and counterclaims, Innova's boss, Charles Huang, and yes, that's another A positive, is accused by former associates of squandering or moving $1 billion of those profits, spending lavishly on luxury aircraft, an $18 million house in Los Angeles, and homes for his mistresses, naturally. The previously little-known Chinese-American businessman's fortune was transformed by the British taxpayer, we're very generous us guys, through 11 government contracts worth approximately £4.3 billion for lateral flow tests, made in China and sold by Innova. The government fast-tracked the company after its British representatives sent a direct email to Dominic Cummings, that's the chief advisor to the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson, and yet that's an A positive, and the then Prime Minister is another A positive, Boris Johnson. So that's a list A positive. That's 3 A positives in a row, but not referring to one thing, but to two things. Dominic Cummings was a thing, the chief advisor to the then Prime Minister, who is also a thing called Boris Johnson. So we've got two things, and we've got 3 A positives. In July 2020. And a Guardian investigation has found the fast-tracking of Innova was supported by the then Chancellor Rishi Sunak's team at the Treasury. So Rishi Sunak gave this guy a lot of money. Innova became, for a period of at least 4 critical months, the only company authorised to supply rapid COVID tests in the UK, despite scores of others developing similar kits. A score is 20, so scores means 20s. Yeah, it means like hundreds or like thousands, but scores. So 20, despite scores of others, so more than 20, developing similar kits. But they didn't get the contract. Huang got the contract. At the time, the government spending watchdog raised concerns, participle, saying the lack of competition posed risks to value for money. Okay, and here's Huang walking to his private plane. He is alleged to have spent, look at that perfect infinitive, after a passive form. He is believed, he is alleged, he is reported, he is known to have spent profits on luxury purchases, including private jets for £70 million. In his evidence to the COVID inquiry last October, Cummings told how he had pushed through the first Innova contract with backing from Sunak's team. The intention was to allow the economy to reopen by providing enough kits for up to 10 million people a day to test for the disease. The mass daily testing plan, labelled Moonshot, and that's a participle labelled, that's where we got the comma, was met with scepticism by scientists, including Jonathan Van Tam, the then Deputy Chief Medical Officer, who has told the inquiry that he had real doubts about whether it was workable. The Moonshot plan became part of the NHS Test and Trace, known as the Mass Testing Programme. In the autumn of 2020, Cummings said in his written statement, Sunak's team supported me with the mass testing team as we tried to overcome horrific Whitehall bureaucracy, secretly buy hundreds of millions of fast tests before other countries realised their value and there was a PPE-like pandemic. So it had to be done in secret for some reason, Dominic Cummings, the chief advisor to Boris Johnson, is telling us. The UK Health Security Agency, doesn't that sound ominous? The UK Health Security Agency has confirmed in response to a Freedom of Information request that the secret buying of tests was the first contract awarded to Innova. Agreed in September 2020, it was worth £103 million. The government went on to spend billions more with the company. The information raises further questions about the UK government's widely criticised decision-making during the pandemic and the huge sums of public money, the taxpayers' money, spent after normal procurement processes were suspended. Yeah, so usually you put things up for a tender, don't you? You try and get the best bidder to offer you their equipment and you give the contract to them. But that didn't happen in those days. The apparent support of Sunak's team also raises questions about how far the Treasury was involved in the government expenditure of billions of pounds on test and trace and personal protective equipment. Sunak has repeatedly presented his work during the pandemic as a landmark success, telling workers at an event on the first day of the 2024 general election campaign, "You know you can trust me when it comes to the economy. I got our country through COVID." Risks to value for money. For Innova, landing any government contracts at all was an extraordinary bonanza. The company was only formed in March 2020, so it's about 1 month old or a few weeks old, by Huang's California-based financial vehicle, Pacifica Capital Incorporated, said by some of its own investors in the legal claims to have had little money behind it. So it's a new company with very little money. Huang, a serial entrepreneur, had limited evident success in his track record, so he didn't have an established track record, according to the legal claims against him. After the pandemic hit, everything changed. Another investor in Pacifica had a connection with a company in China, and I'm not sure how to pronounce that, Huamin Biotime Biotechnology, which, like many others around the world, including some in the city of Xiamen, was beginning to manufacture lateral flow test kits. Kimberly Thonga, Innova's UK representative, yes, it's another A positive, who had previously worked in marketing for a series of shoe companies, including Dr. Martens, emailed Cummings in Downing Street in July 2020. In that email, published following a Freedom of Information request by the Good Law Project, Thonga promised that the tests were a true game changer. Cummings told the COVID inquiry he saw the rapid tests as key to the proposed mass daily testing that he believed could enable super spreaders to be isolated and so allow most of the country to operate as normal. He immediately referred Thonga to another Downing Street advisor who replied within an hour to tell him, "We are very keen," and introduced him to a leading civil servant. That's somebody who works for the government in a very high up position. In September 2020, Innova was awarded the first UK government contract, although its test was still not evaluated. So they're already spending lots of money on this company for the tests, even though we don't even know if the tests work. It was authorised for use by the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency 3 months later in December 2020. The authorization was based on tests carried out at the government's high-security Porton Down laboratory. It's a very famous lab list, guys, in the UK, and it specialises in chemical and biological warfare, which had been asked to evaluate a number of lateral flow tests and indicated that it had prioritised Innova's product because contracts had already been awarded to the company. The Department of Health and Social Care identified Innova at that time as the only supplier with a validated test that could produce the large volumes needed and work flexibly. By March 2021, Innova had already been awarded contracts worth £3.2 billion, according to a critical National Audit Office report published in June of that year. The public spending watchdog noticed that Innova was still the only supplier of lateral flow devices for self-test approved by the MHRA. The report warned that there were risks to value for money due to a lack of competition and normal regulatory processes. Yeah, there was no tender. Cummings said the government needed to buy these tests secretly, without alerting the rest of the world. But countries across Europe were already evaluating rapid tests, and Italy was already using them in ports and airports from the summer of 2020. In September 2020, the World Health Organization issued guidance noting that nearly 100 companies were developing or manufacturing rapid tests. It announced a global partnership to supply 120 million kits to poorer countries, made by companies in the US and South Korea. So very good for those companies in the US and South Korea, because that's a lot of kits and that's a lot of profit. In February 2021, the EU published a list of 82 different suppliers, but not including Innova or Xiamen Biotime Biotechnology. Innova did offer to sell to other countries, but does not appear to have done so in large quantities. Notice it's appear and then a perfect infinitive, because you often see perfect infinitives after appear, seem, claim, hope, pretend, even promise is possible, and expect. In a scathing report published after Innova first distributed them in the US without authorization, the Food and Drug Administration, this is an American organization, said the tests should be thrown away or returned to the company. Why would they say that? It has repeatedly barred attempts to import the tests into America. An FDA spokesperson said COVID-19 antigen tests produced by Xiamen Biotime Biotechnology Company are being refused admission into the US. Innova was included in a later edition of the EU's approved list, among many other manufacturers, as a B supplier. Yeah, so they were on the B team for the EU COVID tests. Member states were advised to use tests from the A list. The UK government is said to have ordered, notice the passive form and then the perfect infinitive. The UK government is said to have ordered, is known to have ordered, is alleged to have ordered, is supposed to have ordered, is suspected to have ordered 1.89 billion tests from Innova altogether, participle, paying the company approximately £4.3 billion. In one of the legal claims against Huang, the former Innova executive Robert Kaspriak states, Innova's UK contracts generated substantially all, now you can't say substantially all, so that is a mistake, that's why they write sick sometimes, it means that Robert made a mistake here when he was talking. So Innova's UK contracts generated almost all of the revenue for the Pasaka Group. In 2022, Huang was featured in a film, Asian Inspirations, saying Innova had made a profit of $2 billion after tax from its COVID contracts. Huang is now contesting legal claims over those profits from Kaspriak and Innova's UK representatives, Thonga and Charles Palmer, claiming they should have been paid more. So he's been taken to court by his old colleagues, this guy here, and the UK representatives, Thonga and Charles Palmer. They sound like British citizens to me. They may not be, but they sound like it. Kaspriak accuses Huang of having a checkered career. This means black and white, yeah, checkered. A checkered career and few achievements of substance before Innova's remarkable fortunes in the pandemic. Huang is accused in the claim of being a high-end con artist who squandered or moved. Oh, and by the way, a con artist is a man who deceives you for financial gain. Okay, and so he is being accused now in court of being a high-end con artist who squandered or moved for his own use, due to incompetence, power and greed, more than $1 billion of assets generated from UK sales, so generated from the UK taxpayer. He is alleged to have lavished, he is said, he is known, he is alleged to have lavished some of the proceeds on luxury purchases, including private jets for $70 million, an $18 million luxury home with a swimming pool in LA known as the CEO House, and of course homes for his mistresses, as well as poor investments in flailing businesses. So he hasn't been so successful elsewhere. Kaspriak also claims Huang was trying to secure a knighthood, from the royal family, I suppose, but trying to secure a knighthood and working on having a film made about himself titled Overnight Billionaire. Wow, must watch that one time. He alleges Huang promised to buy out his shares for $75 million, but never did, and ultimately fired him from the company. Huang has responded by denying the claims and alleging that Kaspriak and the former Innova chief executive Daniel Elliott stole millions from the company. Kaspriak and Elliott deny those allegations. The UK representatives, Thonger and Palmer, are also suing Innova in California, claiming that their company, Disruptive Nanotechnology, was due 10% commission on all UK contracts, and so they should have been paid $500 million. They accuse Kaspriak and Elliott of duping them out of that commission and pocketing the money themselves. So yes, you can use pocket as a verb. You can pocket money for yourself, certainly. And so that's what they're accused. They're also making accusations. They're all fighting now, all these old colleagues, over their millions and millions and millions of pounds. Instead of the saved commissions being used for the promised purpose, to keep the price of Innova's COVID-19 test competitive, the claim alleges Elliott spent tens of millions of dollars to purchase lavish properties, expensive cars, a private jet, and other luxury items. I think that's enough.